Yo, what's up guys, welcome to this video. My name is Vectura, aka John, and this is a short update video on my build guide that I posted yesterday. So if you haven't seen this one yet, please watch it first and come back right after to this video. Okay, so I've actually ran calculations on the bleed and poison with the recoup, and the results are pretty interesting. With the 52% recoup we had yesterday from this flask, 30%, then our helmet, 8%, and these 5 nodes, we were basically, well, not immune, but pretty much immune to poison damage already, with the maximum hit being about 8k. However, with only 52% recoup, your max physical hit that inflicts bleed is less than 2k. So what does that mean? Well, in case you are sitting on these 52% recoup only, I would highly recommend you to put 2 bleeding charms instead of 1 bleeding and 1 poison. Because as I said, poison isn't really a problem even on this lower end of recoup. What's still important to keep in mind here, we are talking only maximum hits, right? So 1 big slam, 1 big hit that inflicts you with bleeding or poison. If you get hit by various lower number hits, it will be much better in practice. And realistically speaking, those big hits, those really big hits, is something you can dodge, right? These are most of the time boss attacks. Even though in practical terms, this will be most of the time more than enough, as you saw in yesterday's video in the showcase. I personally really do like very, very tanky characters, and so this build also aims to be just that. Okay, so that being out of the way, how much recoup do you actually need to be borderline immune to bleeding and therefore don't even have to run charms anymore? It of course depends on your maximum energy shield. For me right now, I'm sitting on about 11k with 450 life. I need 77% recoup to not die from bleeding. So basically, for me to die, the hit has to be more than my energy shield is. Okay, so how do we achieve 77% or more recoup without wasting like 20 points on a tree? Well, as I already told you yesterday, you can get recoup on your amulet. So I actually bought myself a new amulet with 18% of damage taken recouped as life. You can go higher than this. This is only tier 3, but I wasn't quite able to afford a tier 1 one with the other stats also being very good. Having, for example, +4 level of all spell skills. So having added this brings us to 70% recoup now, which is equivalent of about 4k max hit physical damage that inflicts bleed. 4k max hit is a lot. You could just settle with this, or maybe you even got higher damage taken recouped as life on your amulet, then you can totally settle for this. And you've finished. In my case, as I said, I want to reach real immortality. And since this one is only tier 3, I need to get a bit more recoup. To be precise, I would have to invest 2 to 3 more points in my passive tree. So before we had these 2, as you can remember, you will have this also right now. And then we would have needed to add 1, 2, and maybe 3, depending on how tanky you want to be. 76% realistically speaking will totally be enough with a maximum physical hit of over 9,000 already. This, in my view, however, brings the total investment for recoup on the passive tree just a bit too high, right? I don't want to invest that much points into recoup because we are missing out on other things then. So what I decided for, you can choose the other option to just invest more into recoup or have a better amulet. But what I decided for is take out these 2 points actually. Now I'm sitting only on 59% recoup again. But therefore, allocating on our amulet Taut Flesh. 20% of physical damage taken recouped as life. Well, it says physical damage, but remember, bleed always comes from physical hits, so basically for our need of recoup, this is just 20% recoup. So with all of this together, I'm sitting at 79% recoup right now, which is immunity to bleed. So I do not need any bleed charms anymore. I do not need any poison charms anymore. These new points gathered from this can be used to allocate this cluster again, which is just more damage. By the way, for those of you wondering, because this was open in the last video, I for myself decided to go with this node and drop these 3 points right there, because Molten Being at this level of tankiness actually doesn't provide us as much. And in terms of bleeding, I do think, I'm not sure, but I do think it doesn't change anything. Because yes, 5% of the physical damage is being reduced by our 75% fire resistance, but this applies to the hit as well, so we also take less damage and therefore recoup less damage, so the outcome is the same. And again, 60% increased spell damage on one node is just extremely good and a very good bonus. If you do not decide to allocate this, which is very cheap by the way, you still want to go with Cooked, as before. Where is it here? Just very, very nice damage. If you do not know how to anoint an amulet in 0.5, I will show you real quick. You will have to go to the Delirium quest line. It is this one right here. And you only have to travel until you get here, the Withered Willow. Then you can just traverse over here. And here on this tree, you can allocate your amulet. So you just put these 3 liquid emotions in exactly this order. Into here your amulet, and then you press instill. And for those of you wondering, as long as your amulet is not corrupted, you can still change the anointment later on to something else. I hope this video was useful for you for seeing how tanky this build actually can get versus bleed and poison damage, and how much investment in recoup it actually needs you to achieve borderline immortality against bleed and poison. Thanks a lot for watching, see you in the next one, bye bye.